When I first started decluttering, I thought that I was just making room and getting rid of stuff that no longer fit. But as I was going through it, I realized that I wasn't just sorting through things. I was sorting through old seasons and survival habits that didn't fit my life anymore. Decluttering is what made those patterns visible. And once I saw that, the way I moved through life completely changed. If you're new here, hi, I'm Christy, and I talk a lot about decluttering, but probably not in the way that you are used to. Because after years of doing this, both in my own life and helping other women do it, I realized that decluttering is rarely about the stuff. It's about capacity. And so today I want to walk you through how the decision to start decluttering my life changed everything. Here's the honest truth. I didn't declutter because I was desperate or overwhelmed. In my head, I wasn't drowning in stuff, I wasn't in crisis, and I wasn't fully convinced that there was anything wrong with keeping what I had. In fact, my home was always clean and nobody would ever come over and assume that there was clutter. But I always knew in the back of my mind that I had things that I needed to sort through or get rid of, but I just didn't feel like dealing with it. Decluttering felt optional, like one of those things that you do eventually, but not something that needed to happen or even that fully mattered in the broad scheme, again, because I didn't feel like I was drowning in stuff. What made it a priority for me was that my husband and I had gotten married a few years before, but because of our jobs, we were living in two different cities. And so that meant that we were both like retaining our own spaces, two homes with very grown people full of our own stuff. Long story short, we were finally able to be in the same city and we were moving to our dream space. But that space was and is smaller than us having two full homes of stuff. And practically speaking, there were just some things that weren't going to fit. So it never started out as this big like self-growth moment. It was logistics. What fits, what doesn't, what makes sense to bring into this next chapter together. Since I never really wanted to deal with it, I treated it like I do all the things that I don't want to do. I tried to make it fun, and so I made a game out of it and I recorded the whole process for you to be able to follow along with. I thought, cool, I'm gonna be done with this in about 30 days. Boom, girl. As I was going through things and looking at all the stuff that I had held onto, that was when some very unexpected things came up for me. Decluttering showed me what I was really holding on to. So here I am going box by box, drawer by drawer, and I start having all of these emotions. I started reflecting and I saw that I was no longer just sorting through stuff. I was sorting through whole seasons and chapters of my life. And I saw so clearly that none of that stuff was neutral. Everything had a reason why it stayed. Some things I kept out of guilt, not because I loved them, but because getting rid of them felt like admitting that something didn't work out the way that I hoped it would. Some things represented old versions of me, maybe who I thought I would be by now, what I thought my life would look like, goals that made sense in a past season, but no longer fit the woman I am today. There was fear too, a lot of it. Fear of wasting money, fear of regret, fear of not having enough, fear that letting something go meant that I was being careless or ungrateful or short-sighted. There were things that I kept because they helped me remember how life used to be, seasons that were gone and were never coming back. Every pile, drawer, closet, box had a story. It had a version of me that I didn't fully know how to release. Decluttering forced me, or I guess rather invited me to come to terms with that and then decide how I was going to move forward from there. That's when I realized that it wasn't about my house anymore. It was about how much emotional and mental weight that I had been willing to carry into every new season of my life. If you don't know my story, holding on to things subconsciously became a way for me to deal with the loss of losing my parents when I was in my 20s. It was a rough time that had a lot of new responsibilities and sadness and financial strain and just, my 20s weren't it. By my mid-30s, my life had done a complete 180, and so I thought I had dealt with it. But I didn't realize that I was still carrying mindsets that did not match this leveled up version of me and was impacting how I moved through life. Decluttering exposed mindsets that I had carried into a better season without realizing it. Something that was probably the biggest surprise was how many old survival mindsets that I had carried with me into this and other new chapters. Saving things just in case, holding on to backups that I didn't need anymore, waiting to use my nice things for special occasions, operating from a mindset of scarcity instead of trust. Those mindsets were born out of a place of need, and I don't fully fault myself for having them because in that before season, life was really hard, like really hard. I was genuinely looking out for every single dollar. There was little to no money to do nice things for myself. And those moments where I was able to do something really nice for myself, buy something really nice for myself, they were so far and few between that saving them for later and saving to use them just did not feel like an option. And so while those survival instincts kicked in and they got me through the rough season, they were not designed to lead me in the next one, but they were still there. I could suddenly see how they showed up in really ordinary ways. For example, I remember keeping things that weren't fully working right, but they were still kind of working, so we still used them because part of me believed that replacing something that still had use, even if it wasn't the best use, even if it wasn't serving me well, would be financially irresponsible. I bought a lot of cheap things when I actually wanted and could afford the nicer thing just so that I could have more just in case, even though my life no longer required that level of contingency planning. I noticed how often my first instinct was to save my nice things for a hypothetical future instead of letting my space reflect the life that I was actually living. And as I was going through it, I noticed how it made me feel and how I never felt like I was good enough or that a time was good enough for me to be able to enjoy these things or live in the season that I had gotten to. Cluttering slowed me down enough to notice these patterns in a way that I hadn't before. And it gave me a chance to ask better questions. Am I keeping this because I need it now or because I am still operating like I might need it someday? And so the process of decluttering taught me that you can be in a completely new and better season, but still be making decisions like you're in an old one. Living that way made it hard for me to fully receive and live in what God had done and was doing in my life, and hard to fully move into what was next. Old mindsets will stifle your ability to move into the next space. But once I dealt with it, I started to see my life expand again. Decluttering also helped me untangle myself from past seasons without pretending they didn't matter. As I let go of all of these physical things, I realized how much emotional weight that I had still been carrying from seasons that had already ended. Some of it was actually healed, but never fully released. Some of it, a lot of it, was still unresolved, sitting in boxes, waiting for my attention. When I slowed down enough to actually deal with it, I realized that it was still very much present, even though that season itself was over. And I learned that decluttering didn't erase those seasons. It didn't ask me to forget them or minimize them or pretend that they didn't shape me. It gave me the space to finally process what still needed healing and to stop living like I was in a place of still needing to manage the past. It showed up for me in relationships too, where I had to be honest with myself about how much fear I was carrying, especially around losing people. Part of me was still protecting myself by keeping people at a distance, not allowing other people to help me, feeling like I needed to do everything on my own because that was something that I had gotten used to. Once I saw that, I could make different choices. So like even in my relationship with my husband, I have been able to let him love me, support me, care for me, and treat me well without feeling like I still have to be in this mindset of doing everything on my own. Letting go allowed me to stop living as if loss was just right around the corner. It was something that unintentionally I had just grown to expect, and dealing with those physical things, I saw how much it was related to all of these other aspects of my life. And it was just so healing. It was so cathartic. It wasn't about becoming someone new, but about allowing my life, my space, my relationships, my habits to finally reflect who I already was. Letting go forced honesty. Most of the things that needed letting go, I was keeping them because even though a season was done, I was not fully ready to close a chapter. Naming that was so freeing. You see, because there's a difference between being healed and being done. While the season was done, there were things that I needed to acknowledge what emotions they triggered and how it affected me before I could release them. It removed this pressure that I put on myself to pretend that I was ready for things that I wasn't. And it created room for God to meet me where I actually was, not where I thought that I should be. That mattered to me because I know, and I have learned even more deeply, that honesty is always the starting point for peace. Peace is never going to come from trying to fix yourself faster. It will only come from being honest about where you actually are. And then I had more room for the life that I was already living. Every piece of clutter or thing that you keep but you don't use, don't want, don't need is asking something of you every time you see it, or even every time you ignore it. It pulls your attention and reminds you of decisions that you have not made yet. And so part of your brain is always working in the background, deciding, postponing, delaying, managing. And it's like a slow, constant leak where it's nothing dramatic, but over time, it really does start to drain you. And so even when your life has moved forward, your attention is still being pulled backward because you find yourself constantly spending this mental energy. Every time you open drawers or closets or see these piles or pass by that room, you are having to manage reminders of old seasons that you haven't fully dealt with. Dealing with it meant that my home started supporting what I need, where I am, and how I actually live. Once those leaks were closed, I now have room not just in my home, but also in my mind, room to make my life more efficient and to focus on what actually needed my attention and also decide where I wanted my attention to go. Going through this process taught me that when your space is filled with things that no longer fit your life, that your energy gets divided between who you are and where you've been or where you think that you might go. And practically speaking, it wastes time and wastes capacity because you find that you are just spending more time looking through things, going through things, trying to figure out where different things are, because nothing is really efficient. Nothing is really done well. There's not a lot of space for just breathing room and for your home to be as efficient as it can be. And so getting rid of the clutter is about stopping those small constant drains so that your energy can stay where your life is and where your life is going. How this connects to a privileged mindset. This is where my idea of a privileged mindset comes in, which I also talk a lot about. When I talk about privilege, it's not about what you have or what you've been given. It is about seeing yourself as worthy and moving accordingly. Not in a loud, flashy way, but in the decisions that you make every day about what you tolerate, what you keep, what you carry forward. For the longest time, my life and my circumstances had improved, but my decisions were still being shaped by fear and scarcity and survival patterns. Decluttering showed me that deciding that you're worthy is something that you have to actively step into in every part of your life, and not just once, but over and over again. Because old narratives don't just disappear once your life gets better. You have to continuously challenge the narrative that you need to keep what no longer serves you or serves how you see yourself or where you see your life going. And to that end, leveling up is also a continuous journey. A privileged level up mindset says that I don't need to live like I am bracing for impact anymore. I can stop living my life in worst case scenarios that no longer apply. I am allowed to let my space, my habits, and my decisions reflect the life that I'm actually living, not the one I survived. These can be things like not keeping backups out of fear, not saving your life for later. For me, that meant that trusting that what God had done in my life was real and that it was okay for me to move forward. And so decluttering for me wasn't about becoming privileged. I had already accepted that. I had already owned that. But it was about finally living in alignment with my mindset of believing the life that I was building was worth supporting. So when I say that decluttering changed everything, I'm not saying that it fixed my life. By the time I started decluttering, my life was already good, but it helped me to stop living in old seasons and to fully embrace where I was, fully embrace this leveled up version of me, fully embrace this idea of privilege and who I was now or then at the time and who I am becoming. It helped me to see where old mindsets were still somewhat running the show in the background, where I needed honesty and peace over pressure, and where I needed to create room and stop leaking energy. And so I no longer see decluttering as a one-time project. It is a lifestyle for how you approach every area of your life. That's also why I created my Declutter Your Life 2026 digital planner. I knew that if this work was really important to me and really impactful for me, that it was going to do the same thing for other people. And I have seen even on my comments how it has done that for other people. So it's been my way to actually walk you through the steps and the process of making decluttering be a lifestyle. In it, we focus on decluttering your space, your mind, your time, your relationships, all of these pieces as you move throughout the year. It's practical, it's flexible, and it's meant to support the intentional leveling up that I've been talking about in this video. If that's something that you feel will support your journey, check it out using the QR code on the screen, or I will link it in the description below. It is a digital planner, so it is meant to be used digitally. I am planning to have a live session to answer any questions and talk through that. So stay posted because that will be coming. All right, my friends, that is all I have for you. I hope this video gave you permission to let go of at least one thing that no longer fits, physically or otherwise. If it did, make sure to like and share with someone else who might need it. Also, if you're not subscribed, what are you doing? I'm gonna need you to jump on that. With that, I love you so much, and I will see you in my next. Mwah. Bye for now.